Hello, welcome to part 2 of the military inspired refashion. To quickly recap, I got my hands on a couple high school blazers, one of which I refashioned in part 1. What you see here is what's left of the second blazer after I stripped it of its sleeves and breast pocket. I forgot to take a before shot, but let's just say it looks like it's been through a cat fight or two. I'll show you what I mean later. To give you an idea of what it looked like before, here's a clip from the first one. Now let's get started. Since the lapels were damaged, I decided to do away with them. To start, I placed the pin below the damaged area, then drew a line from the pin to the collar. For allowance, I made another line ½ inch from the first and cut. Afterwards, I opened up a section below the raw edge to blend it in with the rest of the seam. Next, I turned under the ½ inch allowance and pressed. While doing so, I made sure the center front halves didn't overlap and that both sides were symmetrical. For the collar, I made it a stand-up by taking a little off the top. To do that, I first pinned it to my ideal height, then marked a ½ inch above the pins and cut. After cutting, I opened up the rest of the collar, then turned under the allowance and pressed. Before sewing, I matched up the center front to ensure they were the same length. With the sleeves gone, I used the opportunity to adorn the shoulders. Using the damaged sleeve, I made a couple epaulets by first taking apart the sleeve and lining, then pressed. On the sleeve fabric, I drew a rectangle 6 by 12, then divided it in half for each epaulet and cut. Next, on one of the epaulets, I created a point by first measuring and marking 1½ inch to locate the center. For the sides, I did the same, measuring and marking 1½. To complete the point, I drew a line from the sides to the center, then cut. Afterwards, I used it as a template for the other epaulet and the linings. With 2 epaulets cut from the main fabric and 2 from the lining, I took one of each and placed them together right sides facing. I then pinned and sewed a ½ inch from the edge, leaving the squared end open. Next, I clipped all the corners and reduced the seam allowance to a ½ inch. Once I was done, I turned the epaulets right side out, then gently used my scissors to help with the corners. To attach the epaulets to the blazer, I place them on the shoulders, aligning the point with the shoulder seam. approximately ½ inch from the neck. With the point pinned in place, I sewed the other end along the armhole allowance. I already went ahead and did the other side, so here's what that looks like. Now before I continued with the epaulets, I finished the armholes. I did this by turning under the armhole allowance, then taking the existing lining, doing the same and pinning them together. Once that was done, I unpinned the epaulet from the shoulder, then stitched along the edge. I then resumed attaching the epaulets. To secure the points, I hand sewed them to the shoulder with the small buttons. Now for the fun part. This trim, because it's braided, unravels easily, so I started by taping the ends. Alright, so I went ahead and pinned one side to give you a preview of the pattern I used. For starters, I put pins in place to use as my guide. I placed one an inch below the neck, and on the side I placed a row of pins 5 inches from the center front. Taking my braid, I first made a loop with the end tucked under, then pinned it following my guide. If you look closely at the pattern, it almost looks like pairs of scissors being looped together. I did 4 of them in total, 1 for each button. If you find this design intimidating, there are simpler ones out there you can try. After my pattern was pinned, I went straight to finish. The trick to sewing this trim is to stitch along the sides. On the sides of the trim, there's a row of stitching that I used as a guide. Now before I started sewing, I carefully removed the tape, then tucked the end back under the loop. To sew, I used a 3mm straight stitch, but you could also use a small zigzag. Now all that was left was to attach the buttons, and voila! I hope this tutorial has inspired you to take a second glance at a damaged piece and think about how you can rework it around its flaws. With that, I want to wish you a very special holiday and all the best for the new year. And as always, thanks for watching. See you next year!